Alright. Hello everybody, Zeteo here. Today we're going to be doing a replay analysis. Let's get into it.
Game started.
So this one was requested in the Academy chats by Zeraphyre, sorry. Spawned as our brown guy, R14 OS, looking to improve on the air economy portion of this, primarily. This is a longer match, so I'm going to speed up quite a bit. But yeah, solar's here not great. I mean, wind was kind of low. You can do wind and just like build a bunch of wind and then get your air lab. Delaying this is kind of okay as an air player. Primarily because any bombing play that happens early on, like bombers are kind of expensive and they take a while to build. So there really isn't going to be too much early, and if they do it too early, then they're going to be behind economically. Yeah, you can kind of just like have a radar out and like see a bomber, like see a dot coming, like if they're coming towards you and try to bomb you, which generally speaking they won't, because it's kind of expected to have a bomber out. So with that in mind, you can actually open with a bot lab, build a couple bots, and then reclaim it, get 100% of that metal back, turn it into an air lab, and then do the air stuff. And that way you have a couple of ground bots that you can quickly get out to start building on stuff, because the aircon doesn't have a lot of build power. It's got only 65 and it takes a while to build, so it just kind of sets you back a little bit. You can otherwise you can buy a bot con from one of the players or something like that, or a vehicle con, transport it over with your air lab to just have some build power, because yeah, these are just not very good build power and they take a while. So yeah, if you produce your own bot cons, you can like work up a bit of economy and then get the air lab and just like, get some some wind going, get a energy storage to store up some of your energy, and then a couple of some converters, and just keep adding on winds and converters and stuff. And at some point, obviously, you do want the air lab, and then you can start building some fighters and stuff. Because yeah, this early on, not much is going on. And the primary thing on this map is the water, so you want to support your water guy as much as possible, but at the same time, ships, they're pretty expensive, and it takes a little bit for them to have enough ships to really start fighting, where, by comparison, if you go bots early on or something, or if you go like blitz or incisor, like certain things can happen early that just can't happen with sea, because it takes a little longer to build up. This can be important too to kind of help out with. This is a lot of grunts, so I mean, you wouldn't really be able to help here anyways, but if you are going to do an air play, or I should say an air plans early, you want to try to utilize it and help your team as much as possible if you're going to do that. But yeah, just mostly just working on your economy early on. This is actually I would highly recommend spacing these out, or doing it so that there's two rows instead of 3, because if anything kills one of these wind turbines in the middle, it'll likely chain all of the wind turbines, and then you just lose all your economy. And I would highly suggest not putting these converters here. Let me just check, make sure I'm recording. Okay. Sorry, I wasn't sure if I couldn't remember if I switched over from the screen, but anyways, yeah, try to keep your converters away from the wind turbines, because the converters, they don't have a lot of health. They only have 167, and when they die, they explode with a lot of damage. 1,000, or actually it's only 660 damage, but that's still a massive amount, and will for sure destroy anything within the destructive radius. You can hold I to get this information, hold I and shift to get the explosive information, and you can do X and space to get the explosive rings. So the one that's flashing is the self-destruct. The other one is just if it dies. So pretty big radius if it dies, and it's quite a bit of damage. So you don't really want to put that by your easily chained wind turbines. You want to try to keep them separate. 2 air cons here is too much. Like primarily you want to utilize the con turrets as much as possible, because the con turrets are going to be a lot better efficiency. And I would try to avoid guard in your air lab unless you really want, like in this situation, like if you really want an some air units out ASAP, then yes, guard it. But otherwise, like this concert here did not assist this concert, and that is slowing you down pretty dramatically. It's just kind of helping boost this once in a while. This isn't even on all the time, so it's not even really doing anything half the time, and you want to utilize that a little bit more. I think that was probably just a mistake on your part. Like you probably didn't intend for that to happen, but that is what I'm seeing here. So I know that you scouted early and you saw these bases, so that's great. I mean, if you're going to build an air plant, scout early, because there's not a lot of fighters out yet. You can get a sense of who's where, what factories people are building, what factions they are, and just where like turbines are probably going to be, so that later on you can bomb those wind turbines, or just like knowing where the factory is and what faction there is and like what that player is doing in that moment is valuable information for any of your players playing frontline that are paying attention. Not that everybody will be at this level of play. We're looking at 25, or I guess the highest players are 26, but otherwise everybody else is lower. So not the highest OS game. All right, so you do have a T2 con out here. I believe you paid for it. Yep. So you bought that, transported it over. All good stuff. While you're doing this, you could potentially sell this air lab just to pump more of your resources into that. That's generally something you'll see often at higher OS plays, is just like getting rid of a lab to put that metal into economy or into a different lab or something like that. I assume you do it for your T2 air lab, but just so you know, you can do it for these mechs as well, and just like put all the money into it, which you're kind of doing right now. I mean, right now you only have 3 build turrets, so like you can't really utilize that extra metal at the moment, but if you sold it, got another extra con turret or 2, you can certainly get these really quickly, and then you can start, you can like rebuild it, start adding on T1 fighters again, or you could go T2 lab if you want. T1 fighters for now is totally fine. You don't have a lot out here, so I mean, you kind of have done an economic play already. Lube, meanwhile, already has all these fighters out here. So just to compare, since the other player is the other air player is the blue player, you can kind of look at what they've done also, and just kind of compare yourself to them and see like, okay, what did they open with? And we see a lot of converters, we see a lot of wind turbines, and this just helps you crank out a lot more units. I'm sure, I mean, I don't really know blue's opener here. If you did like I don't see any bot cons or anything, so I guess just doing the opener a little bit more efficiently, getting just enough con turrets and just working on a ton of wind in the meantime. Whereas I think, with your idle con turret and a couple of your idle units, it's just slowing you down a little bit here. All right, so I see you're moving some fighters out. I think I saw you supporting this location when I watched this before, which is all good stuff. Support your C as much as possible. Obviously, you don't want to lose the Shuris that you have, but if they die, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, I think the little bit of support that you did here was really nice and helpful. So this is allowing yellow to push a little bit harder. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, brown here kind of in trouble a little bit. You could potentially help this out, but I think maybe your mind's on the macro part of it, which is fine. I mean, I don't think the game's going to end because brown's kind of losing the battle right now, but it is something to think about. It is very strong, or it's powerful to be able to support your allies. Oh, okay, you do have some Shuris over there to help out, but unfortunately brown doesn't have anything left. Yeah, so you just kind of have to back out a little bit. But yeah, supporting your team as much as possible. Any time that you see them not doing as well, try to support them with the Shuris. Now, of course, they need units to be able to, shoot the stun stuff, so that's all important too. Curious if your Shuris went. Okay, they just like came back home. These could have maybe just stayed over by orange, knowing that this is still a problem. you could potentially help that out. But yes, let's look back at your economy since that's primarily what you want to what you're looking for. All right, so when you build this much wind, you can add on more storages. In fact, I would highly recommend more storages because, you know, there's like kind of this notion of like, oh, you know, you just get one and then you try to convert everything else, and that's kind of fine. But at the same time, having a little bit of excess for when this happens so that you don't necessarily need to like severely overbuild wind, just for when it's low is pretty helpful. Yeah, I'd say at this point, like, you should maybe have 2 at least, regardless of if you're, you know, doing the converting thing or not. Yeah, this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem over here. There is Harrians here, so I suppose you can't really help out much there at the moment. So I would, like, okay, so if I was in your position here, I'd be looking towards having a seaplane. Having some seaplanes going. Now you can't do that with aircons. You have to buy a boat, which kind of sucks. But you could buy a boat from Yellow. And then you can do seaplanes, and then seaplanes have a few more options against sea stuff. Torpedo gunships are nice. You know, torpedo bombers, of course, nice too. You don't have a torpedo bomber on your T1, but you can do torpedo bombers if you had a T2 thing going on. Another thing you can do here is reclaim the lab like I was saying before, but this time it's for diffusion if you want to get this done sooner. You're spending most of your build power on it already, so this lab isn't really doing too much while this is going up because you're just like, you know, slowly spending on it. So any chance you have to get that faster is going to really benefit you. And at the same time, you could be building some converters for your existing fusion. You know, so anytime you build a fusion or an APHIS, whoops, that was the wrong button. Okay. Anytime you build a fusion or an APHIS, you want to think about the conversion. You want to look at your energy and just say like, okay, what can I afford in terms of converters to spend more, or, you know, to get more metal into things. Looks like you end up pausing this so you can get some more air units out. I think you're seeing all blue stuff here. And you're like, oh wait, I need to, you know, this might be a problem if he bombs or something. And that's fine. That's good that you're thinking about that stuff. Assuming that you're thinking about that stuff. I'm not, you know, obviously I don't really know what you're thinking about, but, you know, if you were thinking about that, that is a good call to just like consider, like, oh, wait a minute, you know, let me make sure that we don't just die here. You might also be thinking about this, you know, red's getting a little bit pushed back here. I think red will be fine here. You know, fiends kind of, they're rough to deal with, especially with hounds in their current state because of the slower projectiles, but it looks like red's totally fine. Let's go back to your view. Okay, so you're going back to the fusion. You can definitely add on. I think you had everything paused for a moment, so that's why you have so much metal for right now. If this happens, you can just add on. Ah, gosh, I hit the button again. You can just add on some more con turrets. You know, you want to be spending this. I mean, it's not the end of the world that you're floating and you know, it's kind of going out to your teammates, but you know, it's not good to not spend because this can happen. Where now blue just kind of dominates you. So yeah, a little bit of spending would be good. Let's see, how do you get out of this? Okay, so you get at C2 flak. I'm curious to know if blue just like sacrifices all these fighters for nothing. It takes quite a bit of damage, but yeah, he does get out of there, I suppose. There we go, that was the key. He gets a hit. Okay, alright, so now you're adding on a bunch of con turrets, which is good. Yeah, so if this was a little bit sooner, you could have gotten this a little faster and then just had like stuff already ready to go for this. You are floating, or you are sending out a lot of energy. You're overflowing a lot of energy. So yeah, get those converters ASAP. You needed them before the second fusion, so now that you have the second fusion, you absolutely need to get them. You can also reclaim these solars. They're not very good value at all. So solars, like anytime you find, and this goes for any position you play, but if you have solars and you have a fusion, you generally should reclaim the solars. The only time you don't want to do that is if, like, for some reason you actually 100% need all that energy from the fusion. And Even then, it's like, well, this, you know, you want to replace those solars with wind as much as possible. But you are cranking out fighters at a very fast rate, which is great. Some would argue that you might want to just go T2 fighters here. Not a bad call if you go T2 fighters here. They're certainly like worth it, but at the same time, I think there is something to be said about just having numbers, because, you know, if all the T2 fighters, you know, if a bunch of T2 fighters shoot at the same T1 fighter, that's money. You're just like wasting their shots, and now you can like pounce on it. So I really don't, like, personally, I don't really mind having T1 fighters, but they aren't stealth like the T2 fighters, and they're not going to be as great against things like bombers, like T2 bombers. So, you know, just something to consider too is like they have their strengths and weaknesses. And okay, so you've got some converters. You could even maybe use one more. Having like an extra converter is not the end of the world. I mean, actually, what you could do instead is have some T1 converters. They're actually not that bad in terms of efficiency, primarily because they don't have a payback time, whereas these T2 converters, they cost 380 metal and a whole bunch of energy, so you're just kind of, you know, it takes them a little bit of time to pay back is all. It takes 38 seconds since they're converting at 10 metal, at least in terms of metal income, I should say. But yeah, you can actually keep adding on more con turrets. Okay, so you're gonna go Aphis instead. I mean, this is kind of fine. Like, just like the fact that you worked up enough metal beforehand and then built it. Actually, you're probably still gonna stall here because they are so expensive. Yeah, you're for sure gonna stall. I forgot that you only have 3,000 storage. So yeah, this I would say actually just wait, get more fusions. Now fusions, like, because they pay back so much faster and they build so much faster, you actually get more energy out of them in general, like, period. But obviously over time, like, you know, you run out of space, you can't really just keep putting down fusions, and at some point an Aphis is going to be a good call. The other thing is, like, during this time when you're building this Aphis, okay, you're reclaiming stuff. Okay, so that all works out. That's fine then. But yeah, this whole, like, anytime you build an Aphis, that's like a period of time. And same thing with like your first fusion. But it's a period of time when you're spending basically everything on it, and you're not building units. So it's just like a length of time when you don't have units coming out. Which, you know, there's times to do that. You're kind of like breeding for the future. You know, but you gotta be maybe a little bit mindful of what's potentially out here. Now, while you still have this T1 aircraft plants, you can just like add on like 5 to 10 finches, and then just like do like a mass scout, like line them up, and then just like send them in all at once, and get just as much information as you can. Look really, really carefully at what fighters you see, and then you can kind of, figure out, okay, what do I need to be worried about? Are we kind of equal on fighters? Do I have more? Do I have less? Like, you know, do I need to add some more on? If we're equal and you don't think there's going to be a bombing, you know, maybe your scout gets far enough back that, you know, it finds a bomber or something. Is always a nice thing to find. You know, in some cases you won't see any bombers, and then there are some or something, but you know, if you're scouting and you don't see anything, you can just be like, okay, I'm gonna greed a little bit harder, let me get another Aphis or something. You know, it's risky, but it's also like something that is possible. Or, you know, maybe it's not an Aphis, maybe you don't feel safe enough to build a big thing like an Aphis. You can instead build you know, a fusion that gets done a lot faster. You can go right back into unit production. Anti-nuke, good. It's a little bit late, but I mean, it's more than a little bit late, but it's good that you're having it. And in this kind of lobby, I don't know when people typically nuke, but nukes can come out really, really quickly if they're doing like an all-in nuke. Which I honestly don't think is very worth it, because, you know, you can maybe nuke one player and then everybody has anti-nuke up, and then you know, you're just kind of setting yourself back financially by a big margin. So I don't think it's really the best play, but I mean, it can certainly be a big deal. But also, you know, as the brown player, they're probably not as worried about you. Like if you like red is probably the player that would get nuked, or maybe it'd be yellow or something. You know, it's just basically like whoever they think is not going to have an anti-nuke up that is a good person to take out. And usually taking out the red player or the blue player is like a really good choice. So the game sounds are getting a little bit loud, so we're gonna cut that back a little bit, speed up a little bit as well. Hope that's a little too fast. All right, so you got lots of fighters out here, but they are T1. I guess just to compare, you have 209 T1 fighters, and now you know you're adding on some T2 fighters now as well. But just to think about 209, and let's see what blue has. Okay, so blue has primarily T2 fighters, 118. Okay, so you've basically caught up to blue in terms of units. Like if you think about like maybe a T1 fighter is roughly, you know, half as good as a T2 fighter or something. You know, I think you're doing a reasonable job with all that. Looks like blue even has a atomic bomber here. But yeah, let's go back to your view and unpause. Right, big C threat here. And by the way, when you're playing air, I don't know if you know this, but when you're playing air, you want to be looking like at the map like this a lot, as much as possible. Like you want to set up your economy, have things going, you know, then zoom out, take a look at what's going on. Okay, let's zoom in, let's take care of this. Okay, let's zoom out. Because, you know, understanding what's going on, what units are on the map. I mean, you can look at the mini-map technically, but everything gets so squished together, and it's kind of hard to see what units are what. But yeah, any sense of like what's going on is very, very important for the air for any back position actually, but for the air player especially, because you want to be able to see like, oh, the fighter just shot up here, or oh, look, there's a whole bunch of gunships here. You want to be able to respond to that ASAP, because what if those are bombers, and what if those just take out a player? It can be very, very quick. You know, and you also want to hound your teammates for radar as much as possible. Just get as much radar coverage as you can. Now, since since orange has a radar over here, you guys are in an okay position. Wait, where's this radar? I see the radar bubble here. Oh, he has a T2 radar up here. Okay, got it. It's just a little bit further back. Yeah, any extra information you can have, or I guess the further out the radar, the better, because then you have a better chance, more time to like see and defend against things like bombers. Now, obviously, we haven't really seen any bombers this game, but it's certainly a possibility, especially at higher level games, of just like figuring out, are they doing the bombing? Are they doing the bombing? Are they doing the bombing? Because if bombers get through and destroy a player, that's kind of on you, and you know, being able to defend is very important. But beyond all that, you know, I think you've done a pretty reasonable job this game. You've you know, and you just destroyed blue there, and I think that's primarily because you lost so many fighters, just hovering them over your base and stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're doing a reasonable job with your fighters. You're responding. You're doing all the good stuff. Your metal's getting quite high again, so yeah, economically, like air labs, you know, just this. Actually, I'm gonna pause because it looks like the game's over here. As red's done some pretty critical damage here. So as you add on APHIS, you might be surprised at how many concerts you actually need, because your metal's actually quite high here, despite the fact that you're producing bombers, and bombers are the most expensive thing out of the, well, not really. I mean, obviously you can build a dragon or something that's going to be more expensive, but you know, bombers are pretty expensive. But air units take a long time to build, so you know, each like you kind of just need more concerts for, especially for T2 air. And if you run out of room, you can add on a T1 air lab and support it with air cons. It's not ideal, but because they don't take up any space, it can be really helpful to just like boost whatever. And then you can also have them flying around like assisting cons and stuff around the map if you wanted to. Because there's like other things you can do, such as like, like what if you had an air con that came over here with a bunch of T1 cons following it, and you just set up like let's see, your cortex. So I mean, what if you just set up a shoot, I want to call it a doomsday machine, or because that's what it was in TA. Shoot, what is it called? Where's your con? Oh, you have an Armada con. That doesn't help me. The thing that's not a pulsar, whatever that is called. It's got to be con. Okay, here we go. We'll just take a look at orange here. So bulwark. Oh, that's it. All right, bulwark. But yeah, it's like, what if you just set up a bulwark, or what if you set up like a long range anti-air gun that like shot down all these T2 fighters or something, like just like some random thing, like, and you do it like quickly because you have all the air cons following it. So like, there's all these little things that are maybe outside of quote unquote standard play that you can do that are kind of like fancy. Like, oh, what if I just did this? And then, throws people off, and all of a sudden they lose a bunch of fighters, or they're like, why is this bulwark here? You can also do things like, okay, what if we just had some T1 cons go out here, build a bunch of nanos, and build like a couple of bot labs, and just start like cranking out some grunts or some pawns or something. Do the same thing Red's doing, just reinforce it, have them go like out this way, and I don't know. Anyways, that I'm just trying to give you some ideas that like you don't have to stay on whatever you're doing, especially when you have this much money coming in and you feel pretty good on air. You can also do other things that are not air eventually, or whatever. You can do ships, or you can do, or maybe you want to do just air and just have more air labs. I would highly suggest that's whatchamacallit. Shoot. That's right, you need one of these assholes for it. Excuse my language. No, you need a ship, right? Ship. Sorry, my brain's not functioning apparently. Seaplane. I keep forgetting the names of things. But yeah, seaplane platform being like a T1.5 kind of thing. It has stronger like fighters, stronger bombers, stronger everything. Except the lab costs significantly less than a T2 lab. So like you could potentially station your concerts a little bit more on this side, and just start building them out here, and then put on a seaplane platform instead of a T2. And you can do some, they with the seaplane platform you can do things like torpedo gunships or torpedo bombers, or sorry, not torpedo bombers, that's the T2 lab. Sorry, my brain's a little not great today. They have a good, I think, if I remember right, it's Cortex has the better gunship, and Armada has the better torpedo gunship, or maybe it's the other way around. I think it's the Saber is a good gunship, basically. Cutlass, not so much. We don't have a seaplane factory for me to click on. I apologize. I don't know why I'm forgetting all the names of everything, and trying to think of if there's any other like things I should mention. I mean, we pretty much covered it with the the expansion, or the economy, the T2 economy, just like cranking it up. So when you crank it up, you should be thinking about like, okay, what does my opponent have? What do my teammates need? Is there any kind of play that I can do to hurt my opponents? And if you don't see a play that can hurt your opponents, and you feel safe behind the number of figs that you have, then you can greed. And that's basically true throughout the game. So like I was saying, with early on, there isn't a lot that can happen in terms of needing anti-air. So if you just don't have fighters, it's not the end of the world. If someone gets bombed, it's probably just a bomber, and they should just build a nettle, and they'll be, a nettle or two. I mean, and they should be fine and just rebuild. But I think at this level, it's kind of hard because they can lose so much ground, and people aren't the greatest at rebuilding. Um, but I guess what I'm trying to say is that higher OS, that's a pretty common thing of like, okay, you guys just like, if something happens like a bomber early on, like you guys need to be able to, uh, deal with it. And then the bomber is just not a good play anymore as an opener. And I don't really see it at lower OS either. I don't really see a bomber opener. So you really can just do like a bot lab opener type of thing. But then, yeah, as you go into T2, you want to think about like, okay, you want to scout, you want to get as much information as possible. Yell at your teammates to get radar and stuff on the front lines if they don't have it. So you want to pay attention to how far the radar goes out. Because you want to be able to see your opponent's fighters if possible and get a general sense of their numbers. And if their numbers seem kind of low, either they're not as good financially. B, they're really good financially and they're just like greeding super hard and they just don't have a lot. Or C, they're going something like bombers. And you want to be able to determine what it is, if at all possible. And then, figure out, can I afford to do something really quick with T2? Can I afford switching out of fighters for a minute, doing some economy or something like that? And when you're buying a con, it's really not that much time that you have to really worry about. You just buy your con, it comes over, you pause your lab or sell it. Selling it is the more greedier part of it. Build on your metal extractors, check things out and just say like, okay, do I need fighters right now? And if you don't, go for an Aphis. Or I'm sorry, not an Aphis. Go for a fusion first. Go for several fusions before Aphis. But yeah, go for the fusions and get some converters right away. And then, at some point, obviously, like if you do mexes and upgrade and do fusions, or I should say a fusion, it's kind of a lot. So like you might not want to greed past that, but you potentially could, and just keep building, fusions and converters and stuff after your mexes are upgraded. And then like at some point be like, okay, now's the time to switch on. We're building a shit ton of anti-air with fighters and or bombers or whatever. And now you're just like drastically ahead or something. Now, obviously, that's really risky, and you kind of need to be able to read your opponent to do that. So the better you do that, the better off you're going to be in general. So yeah, I like suggesting to scout a lot, scout often. Now, obviously, every time you produce a scout, that's time and money that's not going into another fighter. So that is something to consider, that you are kind of putting yourself back a little bit. But to me, having that information is so incredibly vital, just to be able to know like what's going on. And then yeah, and then the other thing is just like make sure that you're converting pretty well. Just anytime a big energy thing finishes, like a fusion or an Aphis especially, take a look at your energy, see like, okay, how much am I floating? And then just like say like how many how many 600s go into that, like because one converter does 600 energy for 10 metal, so you want to just like count or try to determine that, like roughly speaking, and then just build that many converters and then build the next fusion or Aphis or units or whatever, because otherwise it is just kind of floating out and you're not really doing too much with it, and it's just money that you could potentially have towards something else. And then yeah, just having more concerts and stuff, or doing some fancy play like having a lab out here, or maybe even just having a lab over here, like as the air player, like you can get air cons anywhere pretty darn fast. Now obviously air cons are very susceptible to fighters, so you want to be very, very careful, and anytime you see their fighters move, you want your air cons to get the heck out of there. But yeah, just something to think about, that you can actually like do some crazy stuff with it. Anyways, I hope you learned something. Definitely feel free to ask questions in the thread because you know, I know my brain's not functioning terribly well at the moment. I'm sure I'm kind of speaking all over the place right now. Um, but yeah, hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something and asked questions. Thanks for watching.